I got a Barclay card with a £1,000 credit limit, and by the end of the week in which it had been posted through the door, it had gone on roulette and Coral in Cove, which is in Farnborough, not far from here. And so I knew then that I didn't really have any conscious control, that this is like a real problem.
Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a PT. In this week's episode, we're going to be speaking about how exercise can really help battle addiction. So myself and Mr. Matt Cow, welcome, my man.
Hello, mate.
Both have a little personal story about this one, so I'll throw it over to you, Mr. Cow, with your story first.
Yeah, so I have been recently more open about this than I was a few years ago, but I am a compulsive gambler in recovery for probably more years than I would care to mention. Long time. Earliest memories of gambling, mid-teens, sort of playing fruit machines. Away, I was 6 foot tall from about age 14, so I could always pass for older than I was. Just got mesmerised by the flashing lights and always massively been into my sport. And it became a way of putting my love and excitement for sport almost like on steroids, and really kind of heightened the stimulus response within me. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, which is and isn't relevant. It is in a sense that I've probably got a bit of a brain susceptible to low baseline level of dopamine, and I'm naturally going to want to do things that put my brain to use, even if that is to my own detriment. The older I get, the more I'm not sure how I feel about the label, because I almost feel like it's more of a curse than a gift. You can make an identity around it and it becomes excuses. But regardless, I think that personality type that I have is kind of relevant. And a real problem for me for a number of years, just all consuming, like most addictions, completely taking over like your mind and your thoughts. And once the patterns get wired in your mind, very, very difficult to break free from that. One of my favourite quotes is, "The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken." And it's like you get locked into certain things of a way of kind of seeing the world, that when you need to escape, the default is gambling. When you need to cope with overwhelm, the default is gambling. When the sun's out and you're having a great time, the default is gambling. When you're stressed, and it just becomes a coping strategy, which everyone's got their own coping strategies. But to kind of keep it on topic for the podcast title, which is bringing exercise in, the wonder of physical exercise, I almost think, without sounding wanky, it would almost bring me to tears to talk about. If it wasn't a thing, I don't know how I would function through life. It's a way of just the best natural high that you can get. High intensity cardio, lifting weights, intense, vigorous, pushing yourself. Yes, all the aesthetic stuff that comes off the back of it, of being a bit leaner, feeling a bit better, increased confidence, blah, blah, blah. But the actual kind of the being in the zone and kind of doing it was just a perfect remedy, because I'm sure you're probably similar, but I got to a point where I needed to find something that I couldn't just spend my life trying to abstain from gambling. The recovery was going to take proactivity of finding something else to, don't really want to use the word replace, because in some ways there is no replacement for an addiction. That you could argue I'm never going to get the same stimulus response in my mind through anything other than the first bet. But that's the key, the first bet. After that, I'm just going to be chasing that high of the first bet, which is impossible to encounter. It's going to be like a mirage. I'm going to be chasing the dragon. It's impossible to get. And that is the nature of addiction. You're looking, you've got that euphoric recall of that time that life was just so much better. your heart's beating out your chest, your brain chemicals are on fire doing it, and you think that you'll go back there when you do it, but you won't. You know, I would be betting on Japanese football on a Thursday morning with not a single player's name I could pronounce, with two teams I've never even knew existed as an organisation, sat there refreshing Paddy Power, thinking I'm having a good time. At that point, I'm just completely in the vacuum of addiction. There's no fun at that point. I'm just kind of automated. And I recently spent some time at Gordon Moody, which was the retreat and counselling service, which was incredibly humbling, because that was 4 days in Monday to Thursday, where it's residential. You're in there with other compulsive gamblers. You only get your phone for 1 hour a day. When you leave the place, you sign out your debit card. They show them your bank balance. When you come back, you give them back your card, show them a receipt for what you've bought, show them your bank balance again. And that was kind of really intense, that environment, to get round people that were struggling with it and to realise that it is a real serious thing that is actually escalating out of control. When you look at the stats on gambling, that's one that people talk about, substances and things like that, but that is one that is creeping through the back door. And all the time you've got Drake pretending that he's got £2 million bets on the Golden State Warriors to beat Utah Jazz, or Floyd Mayweather putting his £500,000 bet on Conor McGregor to get knocked out. You're just fueling the idea of people, young guys that are looking for cheap dopamine, that aren't connected with their passions, aren't connected with their purpose. And it's risky, and it's one of those things that is only getting worse. And I've actually been putting out quite a lot of content on the gambling recovery side of things, because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, I like that, mate. So 2 questions on that. When did you realise it was a problem? Or did you know at the start? Because obviously you would never know if you was having a good time, but when was you like, hold on a minute, I haven't got control of this?
When I think about it now, I think at 18, as soon as I turned 18, I got a Barclay card with a £1,000 credit limit. And by the end of the week in which it had been posted through the door, it had gone on roulette and Coral in Cove, which is in Farnborough, not far from here. And so I knew then that I didn't really have any conscious control, that this is like a real problem. But then the rationalisation kicks in. You don't really want to admit it. You can kind of just about bumble through life anyway. So, it almost feels like more trouble than it's worth to admit it, because you have to go deeper into your psyche of, what does this say about me? There's something wrong with me. I've got to potentially fix it. I might have to be more honest than I'm used to being, that kind of thing. So the answer is probably younger than I would give credit for, but one of the most liberating things I've done is just, say out loud and to other people, I am a compulsive gambler in recovery. And that kind of takes the sting out of it a bit, but at the same time is quite therapeutic. And there's no bullshit in my mind then. There's no, well, I might be, but I could win back what I've lost, and maybe I might just be okay, and I'm not really in any debt. Compulsive gamblers are normally in debt. So if I'm not in, and then the chain of the addiction just wants you isolated. It wants you on your own. It wants to pummel you. So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I love the rationalisation, very similar to me. So, I mean, my addiction, I think, is slightly different. And I said this on our last podcast, where there's different types of alcoholics. There's people that are bingers. There's people that wake up every day wanting to drink. There's people that don't even know that they're addicted. My one just seemed to be a binge, but it was all for like confidence. And I said this before, but that was a slippery slope. And it probably was rationalising, saying I'm only going to do this for this. And like the holes I put myself in, like bankrupted myself, I'd go missing for 3 days. And I remember, similar to what you said about maxing out your credit card. So when I was at uni, I got the first time I ever seen, so I got a £1,500 student loan, grant come in for my first semester, and I was like, oh my God, no, mate, it was gone within 6 weeks, and that was meant to last me 4 months. So my laptop direct debit bounced, my car direct debit bounced, my hall direct debit bounced, and I was just thinking, I got no money, so I had to ring my dad. My dad screaming down to my uni, because my dad was an alcoholic as well, so he was seeing these traits in me, whereas my dad was different because he drank every day, whereas mine was just like a weekend offender. But then it was, like you said, it was chasing that first initial high, and the way I am, I'm like 0 to 100 instantly. Everything I do like full send, and it was just like, but I'd always be the last one standing. Like, people would go home, I would then go home and then just carry on until the morning. I'd carry on all the way next through till Saturday night, when people would then come back out and they'd be like, you haven't slept, and I'd be like, no, fucking me. And it's just like, but that's normal, and that's not normal.
No,
and
it's not.
that was my life. No lie, Matt, probably for 6 years, from like 18, abusing my body. I don't think there was one weekend I ever met. When I was at uni, I used to go out Monday, Tuesday. I'd drive back to Basingstoke on a Wednesday, go out Wednesday. I think Thursday was probably the only day I had off. Then it was Friday, Saturday, and just, I was more drunk than when I was sober. But I was very good at masking it, and I think this was the thing when I would have vodka in my car wherever I went, which was embarrassing to say, but if I ever got put in a situation where I'd need to be confident or ever felt the slightest bit of anxiety or embarrassment, bam. And I would like neck it, and then I'd have like Listerine, chewing gum, aftershave, and just be, and like, that's
The extent in which you can mask is massive.
and mask and rationalise it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking back at it now, and I'm like, was I ever saying that was normal behaviour? But again, going back to the point of the topic, so the exercise, I've got a very, very addictive personality. I did have a little bit of a run-in with gambling. I went to up north to, where's the Pepsi Max ride? What's that?
Blackpool.
Yeah. I went to there. And I won, I say big, I think it was like £200, but when you're 18, and I was like, oh my God, I went back the next day and emptied all my money into it. And then I realised, I was like, I can't go back in here. And I don't know what that was, a disassociation with gambling compared to drink, but I think gambling's probably worse because it's invisible. Whereas drink, you could always tell when I hadn't slept, I've been on a bender.
You can usually give away more physical symptoms.
I'd smell, I wouldn't then speak to people. I wasn't, and the thing is, where I'm so loud and energetic normally, everyone would know if I've been out at the weekend. Like Monday compared to me on a Friday, I'm like it would take my soul. And I was just surviving during the week, and that thought process of like just living for the weekend because I like hated the way I was, and taking accountability, ownership to who I actually was very powerful. But I think it started to turn around when I went to Jim Jones, Salt Lake City in America, and then the power of like having standards in the gym, like getting strong, getting fit, and I earned that, and that natural high. And I think that comes from it with the addiction. It's all like superficial, isn't it? It's not like real. It's alcohol's poison, like it's a dopamine hit you chase my gambling. But true exercise and that natural, like I achieved this. It was just a catalyst for me to want to change, because that gave me purpose. Then I didn't want to just live the weekend to get battered. Monday, then I wanted to do my deadlifting, and then Wednesday, and that for me, it was still there, don't get me wrong, but like brick by brick by brick. And then the introduction of my kids, I think, helped massively. But my relationship with it now is much better, depending on the environment. And I said this before, and it is the addiction in me rationalising. I don't know why I can't say I'll never have a drink again when I know the destruction, the collateral damage that it could cause. And it's very selfish on my side, especially with my business, my kids, but I can't physically do it because I've been all right in certain situations if I'm with the right crowd. And again, this is my brain rationalising with me now. I'm doing it now because I'm like, everyone else is a problem. Whereas university, I think I've said this conversation with my mates going out without me because I am the fucking problem. Like, it's me. I'm a loose cannon. I take what I call because I did do a couple of AA meetings. And one of the talks that the guy did was really good because he was like, you deflect and project all of your insecurities to everyone else. And I was almost taking hostages and passengers with me because inevitably I knew I was going to be the one that would end up on the sofa on my own, bottle of vodka on the side, drinking myself till I passed out. And it's like, oh, but that's normal. And it's like, and it's scary because it was so bad. I mean, I remember looking, there was two stories that stand out. So the first one, I had £60 in my bank account left, and I was in London, I had to get a train home, and I had no money for food the next day. And I ended up, and I was like, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into, it was Coral actually, and I'm like, I'm going to double my money because then I can go to the pub, I can get smashed on like 10 pints, then I get the train home, and then I get food. Put the £60 in, it went. And I'm just sat, and I remember I had to stay another night at my mate's. My mate had to like disappear, but I couldn't get home. I had to then borrow money. I couldn't eat the next day. And I said the story because my clients on Monday normally used to pay me cash. And you've had it before when a client was like, I've got to pay you Wednesday. And I was relying on that money. I was like, 24-year-old man with no money, relying on this cash from these clients. I couldn't eat till like 4 o'clock that day, and I was starving. I just remember looking at myself in the mirror like, how have I got to this position? And it's just mental.
It's crazy. I think for you want to consider the idea that, could you have a couple of drinks and be okay? Perhaps. But in my experience, you find a way to go back to your baseline quicker each time. So, for example, if I had a bet this afternoon, I might be able to not have one tomorrow, but the point that I'm back in the lunacy will be probably the latest at the end of the weekend. See what I mean? So it's not just about today, it's about the trajectory, and it gets shorter every time. So you could probably have a few drinks tonight and then not think about it, but then something might happen Saturday or Sunday, and then by this time next week it's like, and it's all it's just snowballed from that thing, and it's
you get into that full sense of security then, because I think that's what happened. Is I think when I did 6 months sober, I was like, I'm fine now. Like I've done 6 months sober, obviously I don't need it, and I was fucking adamant in my brain, like, this time I'm gonna have a couple of drinks and it'll be fine. Honestly, mate, it turned out to be one of the worst. But I think I did 4 days, and I honestly, it was so bad. I think I fell asleep on a curb outside the pub, and I think it was like, was it one of my old clients that found me, woke me up thinking I was basically a homeless person. And I'm thinking that anyone that knows me would look at me like that and be like, that is not you. And but the extent I would go to, and then I just realised, okay, this is like a sort of bigger issue than what I thought now, for sure. It's just madness.
The thing with exercise as well is it's, as a remedy for addiction, it's just perfect because it gives you that instantaneous state change of feeling better in the moment. But then with gambling, drugs, alcohol, whatever, you've got the price to be paid down the line. With exercise, you've got the doing something that your future self thanks you for. So you've got the fun now and more fun to come. So yes, I suppose you could potentially get addicted to exercise and injure yourself and go over the top with it. But do you know what I mean? Like with gambling, it's like, I feel good now, I feel less stressed now, I feel distracted now, I feel like I can cope now. But the consequences are, I've either got to try and live up to that, I'm going to repeat the behaviour, and over time the house is always going to win, so I'm going to lose my money, which is problems because they escalate from not having any money, borrowing, missing bills, blah, blah, blah. So whereas exercise is only it's net positive now and in the future, which sounds obvious to say, and it is obvious, but it's just like, if you're looking to fill the void for something like that, then it's just perfect.
It is a focus. It is a focus, especially when you start doing it properly, because I think when people get into the gym, it's just like, I'm going to go to the gym, I want to lose a couple of pounds. But when you introduce performance-based goals or key performance indicators, that is the beauty of it. And I think that was the addiction for me. Recently started doing high rocks now, like that. I'm all in on wanting to be the best version of myself, and as a byproduct, the aesthetics come from that. It shifts the focus and the dynamic away, and my addiction would hinder what I wanted to try and do. So it was easy for me to then push that back then, because I was like, I'm fucking all in at this. I don't want any negativity around that. And like you said, when you train well and hard, you look good, but you feel good. And I think that was the biggest realization for me when I was dialed in, no alcohol. Sleep was amazing, my skin's amazing. Stress was obviously stressful on our jobs and that, but managing stress was 10 times better. Yeah. And you would have had it when you've had a bit of a bender, obviously different scenarios and that, but everything in life seems to be magnified 20 times worse. And the anxiety, the overwhelm, and it's awful.
Yeah, it's not fond memories. And I think, we're not therapists, but one of the reasons it's so difficult to stop is you get so tied up in the addiction. There's a state called anhedonic, which is normal life isn't very fun by contrast. So it's like, when I'm in a gambling fog, the idea of going for a walk with the dog on a sunny day it's a pathetic idea. It's a complete waste of my time. But the actual me loves that. That's the best thing ever. That's brilliant. The sun's out, you go for a walk, bit of fresh air, take the dog out. I love it. He loves it. It gets no better. But it will when you stop, you have to let that, almost like the brain, adjust back. And it's a real, but no one usually talks about this, it's a real period. For me, it's in my experience, it's usually about 3.5, 4 weeks where normal things become fun again. At the start, they are literally like a ridiculous joke. They're not an option. It's only gambling. And it's like, you have to, the only thing you can do is wait that out. And if you get to the end of the first week and you're like, life shit, you're back to the start. Like, you have to go through that period of, I suppose it's a bit like when you see people in, these padded rooms coming off heroin and they're like screaming and shouting and like just it's because it's the brain's like, we need more. And it's like, no, eventually you will be fine just watching a movie with your significant other, having a meal. But not yet. Like, it's coming, but not yet.
Yeah, it is that way of thinking, because that's the thing. Every time, I go into this stage, I said about my alter ego before, didn't I, where I'd like feel like I was changing personalities, but it's just like my whole thought process was flipped on its head. Everything I care about normally, my morals, my values were just, and it's just, I do not give a fuck about anyone or anything apart from this self-destructive path. And one of my good friends said this, it's like as soon as I've had this one drink, it's like I'm getting on the motorway. I'm only going one fucking direction. Yeah. There's no off turning, there's no hard shoulder. Like, I am going to this destination, and who knows when I'm going to get there. And it's just like, and it's a long walk back then. And like you said, it's been time, because I'm in bits. Like, if I have there's going to be probably a lot of people listening to this or watching this, with similar sort of experiences, but the recovery after it never outweighs the high of it. Like, for me, I'm just a shadow of my former self, and it is interesting because everything I'm sort of thinking, I like getting up early, eating well, training, I'm just like, I just hate all of it. I hate my life, I hate this. And it's just like, we don't realise how lucky we are and the opportunity we've got in that. And it's just, the excessiveness of it. Yeah,
it's crippling. It's a real big thing. It's a lot of addictions out there, and good to talk about this kind of thing. I think definitely a deep episode.
I like it. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next episode.